Hi, girls. It's Mimi from Be Heard Women Empowering Women. I have an amazing, inspirational, exciting, intriguing story today by a beautiful woman named Camille Varacalli. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yeah.
Good for me. Camille has a book out, You Be the Judge, because she had, I guess, the unfortunate things happened to her that she did, which we're going to talk about. And a lot of it has to do with the mob, the Genovese family, different things. So we'll start it right off with, before we go too deep, why did you decide to write the book, Camille?
Truthfully, during the course of my life, people would often say, you should write a book. I know people hear that a lot. Some people decide, you know what, I'll do it. Marie, I think you know the feeling.
Mhm.
But when you really try to sit down and do it, it becomes something that you get obsessed with because it just begins to pour out of you. Some of it is hard to deal with. It's reliving a lot of very painful situations. And yet there is some sort of closure behind it as well.
Right. So that was right. That's true. So let's talk about your story. You were born into a family in, was it New York?
Yeah, I was born in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan.
In Manhattan. And I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which, believe it or not, has a mafia uh, connection. A lot of people there. So, but I wasn't directly linked to anybody. But when you're born into a family, you don't choose who you're going to be born to. And your life from then on is shaped somewhat by who surrounds you, you know, who you meet, right? Your relatives, who lives in the neighborhood, who your dad and mom's friends are. And so for you, you had a lot of people around you, which you did not know as a young girl or even a young woman, what they were into. Is that correct?
Well, not 100%. Nothing was ever spoken at the dinner table of what or who transpired,
Yeah.
what situation. You just knew that you came from a very loving family, and that's really what you knew in your life.
Yeah.
Maybe you thought it might have been a little different because of a couple of simple facts. My father was a bookmaker. So on Sunday mornings, people would come to our home and drop off receipts to my dad. But to me, that was norm. That was the
Exactly.
norm.
Exactly.
There was anything wrong, and it
Yeah.
was my doing it.
Yeah.
So again, like you say, everything is just not black and white. There's always
No. And
there's
so let me ask you, how did you meet your first husband, Joey Colucci?
yes, Joseph Colucci. Actually, my dad had gotten me a new car, and at the time there was a burger place that we would travel back and forth to with my friends called Mitchell's,
Mhm.
Brooklyn Street. And as we were driving one day, a young man blew the horn. Oh, he was so handsome. He was strikingly handsome. He had jet black hair and these phenomenal blue eyes. He could have been a movie star. That's how handsome. And the nice thing, and we would often see him and his friends while I was driving. And that's how we actually met.
Yeah. So you got married fairly young. How old were you?
I was just turning 19 when I was married.
That's very young. Like in today's standards, it's extremely
I,
young. But even back then, that was young, right? And you were married to Joey. I'll call him Joey because I'm sure that's what you called him, right? Did you call him
absolutely.
Joey? Yeah. You were married to Joey how long before he got killed?
We were married almost, I guess it was almost 7 years.
Okay. And you had a child with him?
I had 2 children with him.
Two children with him. Okay. And tell us about the circumstances under which he was murdered.
Quick synopsis: he was murdered by a friend who concerned, I did not know the entire background story to that. The gentleman was Sam Gravano, and he murdered my husband, actually was his first murder victim.
Sammy the Bull,
Yeah,
Gravano, correct? Yes, he's pretty famous. Mhm. And he was hired to kill him, correct? Or asked to kill him.
uh, pretty much. Sammy goes on to say, I've never spoke to him about it personally. He goes on to say more or less something he was ordered to do. Yeah. And it was concerning uh, a young man that I was dating at the time, because during the course of our marriage, Joey had actually cheated on me, and he was having an affair with our babysitter and literally had a child with her. And unbeknownst to me, when he found out, he demanded, I heard, that she have an abortion. And after the abortion, she had nowhere to go. She actually lived on my block. Her parents were friends of mine. And she came to my home in the middle of the day to tell me that she had an abortion, which I thought was with her boyfriend at the time. She was a young girl. She was only, I think, 16 at the time.
Mm.
And I told her she can stay with me for a while. And when she felt better, she would have to go home. And if she didn't, I would have to call her parents. But I did not know that that was, at the time, was Joey's baby.
Yeah,
She,
yeah. I get that, and I can imagine when you found out my first husband, he had what they call now a sex addiction, but he just could not cheat on me. And I know when you're cheated on like that, after a while, some people call it revenge sex. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think you feel like you're not pretty enough for him, you're not enough for him, you have this low feeling about yourself, and then another man pays you attention. Of course, you're kind of drawn to that. And in your case, this man was Tommy Sparrow, correct?
and he was one of Joey's friends that he would associate with. And it was
But he
relatively,
fell, yeah, he fell for you though.
well, I knew the man was attracted. He would come over often and bring, with his friends, bring my children toys. And he was over friendly with me at the time. But truthfully, Marie, to me, it was absolutely revenge. I was out to hurt Joey.
Yes.
Possibly could hurt him the way I felt hurt and betrayed. So actually dating one of his friends,
Yeah.
I thought was a situation for me. But this is a 19, well, at the time I was 22. So this is a 22, 23-year-old speaking.
Yeah, I
Not,
understand. Yeah. I
not the
did the
woman.
exact same thing. I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I not only cheated on him, I made sure he found out, you know.
Oh,
And
then you
yeah,
want,
and yeah, I wouldn't hurt him. So in my book, Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons, there were actually two men that I had affairs with that wanted me to be with them and leave him. And he had to meet with them. It's like the days of old with the knights and the princesses, right? Like a duel. But he did. He met with both of them, and I ended up staying with him. So I totally understand that feeling. So let me ask you now, with Tommy, though, he persisted to the point where he is the one, I think, that brought about this murder of your husband, which you did not know for years.
absolutely.
And you did not know that.
Oh, for 20 some odd years that he was
Oh,
behind the
my.
murder. Unfortunately, it was a very different world with organized crime, and people would get murdered, friends of his, and it was almost not it was accepted, but there was always some sort of ulterior motive that they felt was justified.
Mm-hmm.
So when Joey, the police almost handled it like it was just another hotshot that got murdered for something he probably did or didn't do, because apparently every one of his friends had what almost was an airtight alibi. So I had no idea who could have done this until actually Sammy admitted to it 20 some odd years later.
So here you are, unaware, naive, innocent, grieving, and this man that has been interested in you, you end up marrying him, not knowing how he arranged that you pretty much became available. That's, I don't know how he lived with himself every day that he was with you.
Although they seeing Joey's children in front of him,
Yeah.
and he would, to begin with, he was extremely jealous, and I had a very hard life with him. I mean, he would literally hit me, be abuse my children.
Yeah.
He would cut my clothes and slash tires. He was extremely, extremely determined to just keep me in one place, and that was a place of fear.
Yeah.
And that's how I lived, in fear.
Yeah, I've been there too. I understand that kind of a marriage. And when your first husband was killed, there was another associate with him, which I think made it look more like a regular mob hit. You would just think, oh, these two guys were, into something they shouldn't have been.
Most of Joey's friends were, I wouldn't say connected, but they were, involved in some aspect of, doing things that
They shouldn't be doing.
Joey was a bricklayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joey
And
was.
ironically, didn't they bury, oh no, it was Tommy. Was it Tommy, your second husband? He was murdered too. Was he?
No.
Oh,
Died of
okay.
natural causes.
Well, that's on, just so you know, on the internet, they have that wrong. They have that he murdered. Yeah.
Really, I know he died many years ago, but I believe it was of natural causes.
They're going to have to check their sources. So, okay, so he did die. So you didn't get divorced from him?
I did. I had gotten divorced.
Because the abuse got to be too much. Right. And you finally divorced him.
I actually packed up my kids, left everything behind, and just said, just take what you want. We had 2 big garbage bags, and we left. And I went to my sister's house where my mom was living at the time. And it was just, I said, death was even better than how we lived. So.
And did he let you go easily? Because that wasn't my case.
On his plate, that his own, and it wasn't difficult as I thought it would be, and thank God for that.
Yeah, thank God for that, because my second husband, who I had my 2 children with, and is the reason I stayed with him for so long, was because he was the father of my children, and he made sure that I had no income, et cetera, et cetera. And when I finally had enough of his abuse and divorced him, he stalked me for 2 years. Stalked me for 2 years.
Yeah, I can understand.
And then, I mean, I even moved and he went to where I was. And I ended up going back to my first husband for protection, actually. I mean, it doesn't make sense when you're talking to not normal, but people that have the usual type of marriages, maybe boring marriages, I don't know, but like we didn't have boring marriages. No, we wish they were. And then you meet the love of your life, Robert. Is that the right thing? The next
Robert, he was, if you could create a man from scratch, how you'd want him to be, what you'd want him to look like, be like, feel like. That was Robert. Unexpectedly. And live in it as long as I would have liked him to.
He became ill, I believe. right? Did
Yes,
he? Yeah.
he died with
How long were you with
at
him?
42.
He was 42 when you died. So, yeah, how long were you with him, Robert?
We were
7 years?
married 5, and yes,
So your first marriage was 7, right? With Joey.
oh yeah,
And your second marriage was how long?
around 8.5.
Yeah. And then the third was 7.
Well, the marriage itself was 5, but
Yeah.
we were together 7.
So far you're not having much luck with matrimony. Not at all, right?
No,
And at this point you would think you'd say, forget about it.
as a matter of fact, I have a girlfriend that went years ago. We would write out. I don't know if you remember this, but you'd get a phone book and you'd write everybody's name and number in it. And she used
Yes.
to tell me every time I got a new phone book and put your name, your telephone number in it, you'd end up changing your last name, and I'd have to get a new phone book. And every time I would never do it again, oddly enough, I found myself with a new list.
The thing about the names, okay. Marie Tallow, Marie Calvi, Marie Hopple. Then it was Marie Tallow Hopple, because I had children, and I divorced her. And then it was Marie Calvi again. And now then it was Mimi Breyer, and it's been that way for 34 years.
Oh, beautiful, nice.
And both of my ex-husbands, all told, were 7 years. The first husband, his 7 years was cut. He had so much in 1969, and then he had so much in 1980. But they both, ironically, 7.
It is ironic, Marie, because like we said, writing it, it almost sounds fictional.
You can't believe it. And then,
You can't.
no. And Jerry, my present husband, when we were married 7 years, he turned to me and he said, "Are you going to keep me?" Like the warranty was up. Yeah, he has a sense of humor, very dry. So no, okay, so Robert dies, and I'm sure you were grief stricken for a very long time.
Very long time.
But then
I don't know. I've gotten
no,
over. There's you learn to live with it, and then you learn that it was what it was, and you don't ever compare it to anything else because you cannot. That was just unique, and it stayed that way.
Sudden deaths and murders were like just an everyday occurrence in your life. It was something that, not that it wasn't sad and people didn't grieve, but it wasn't a big surprise when someone died a violent death if they were part of one of these families.
Well, Joey was young, and it was horrifying, and I couldn't what he could have done that could have warranted something like that. But again,
he didn't do anything. He just made the mistake of being with a beautiful woman, and another man that had no morals wanted her. That's pretty much what happened. So then we get into Anthony Serpico.
Anthony came into my life. Actually, he moved onto Johanna Lane, the development where Bob and I created on Staten Island. Bob was a builder, and we beautiful on Staten Island. And I'm getting a call, so.
I see you. I see you. Yeah, keep talking.
How to hang up from that, but okay.
That's okay.
All right. And we built this, and Anthony came to see if he was going to purchase one of the new homes. It was actually the model home we were living in, Bob and I, while we were developing it. And when he walked in, I actually thought his new bride was his daughter. I mistaken sister was his wife. So when I introduced to Robert, I said, "This is Anthony and his wife," pointing to his sister. And his wife was, No, she's not his wife. I'm his wife.
Oh,
I thought
wow.
I would think
Ah,
that for a long time. But being Anthony was there, that marriage did not last very long between him and his new wife. And when she moved out, he asked me to help decorate because I had gone back to Parsons School of Design, and I did decorating full time now after, and that's how I supported decorating.
mhm.
And he knew Robert, and he asked me to dinner. This was 3 years after Bob died, and he asked me to dinner, and I was very comfortable with Anthony. He knew my life. He knew Robert, and it was stupid on my part that any man should settle for comfort in a relationship. So I was unfair to Anthony. I felt that he deserved more than I was able to give. And
Mm.
him didn't understand it in the beginning, but I certainly understand it now.
So you didn't have the spark, you didn't have the chemistry with him. That
I thought I was really, my heart was dead, you know, at that point. And I didn't think I'd ever love again.
mm,
And good, gentle, kind man that he was,
mhm.
he made me feel it was okay to be in a relationship, and what I could give him, the respect that I had for the man, was almost enough. But I was a fool to think that.
So therefore he turned somewhere else eventually.
Uh, Eventually, and left without a word,
Yeah. So
which
it was
was,
another woman though, right?
uh, you know, he said afterwards it wasn't for her because they never ended up together.
Hmm.
He he felt he wanted to show me what my life would be like without him. And
So it was almost like spite, for spite. I'll show her.
again, hard pill for me to digest. But,
Uh,
again, I didn't
oh,
blame him.
oh my heavens. And how long were you with Anthony?
I think almost 7 years.
I'm telling you, seven's the magic number.
I know.
In fact, they made a movie called The 7 Year Itch. But in our case, it wasn't itches. It was things worse than that. Um, so Anthony leaves you, and you have two children. How old are the children at this point?
They're grown by now.
They're
I mean, my
grown by
son
now.
had,
Okay. So you don't need to worry
my,
about them.
no, they were grown people.
Good.
Um,
But you're alone.
I'm alone.
And is it maybe the first time in your life you've been alone?
Uh, in between marriages, you kind of say you are a little, you're trying to readjust. But alone, basically, for those 3 years, I was alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I know for myself that, I had children. So I was never alone, because even if I didn't have a husband at the time, I always had my children there. In fact, when I met my present husband, they were only teenagers. And I never had the experience of living alone. And I don't know what it would be like, and I don't want to think about it. Um, yeah, and you grew up in a fairly large, not large, but what could I say? Robust family. Like there was a lot of noise and parties and good stuff too, right?
I have one sibling, my sister, and
Hmm.
our family is very close. We did holidays together all the time,
Hmm.
and close till today.
Yeah,
I don't know how I've gone through so many of the things in my life
yeah,
without her support.
exactly.
And both, when my son was here, he always supported me, and my daughter was always there as well.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. So, so what happened after Anthony left?
After Anthony left, oddly, I had gone full time working as a decorator. I was doing very well, And then one day, my daughter, who had a fender bender, came in and said to me that she needed a fender. And Anthony was in the auto parts business. And I said, look, call Anthony. He'll help you out. You have nothing to do with me. I mean, we were together for almost 8 years. Anthony will help. Well, my daughter told me she called Anthony's office. He didn't even get on the phone with her. And one of the boys had said to her, they didn't have the part. And I was infuriated. I said, you want to be mad with me? That's one thing. But the kids had nothing to do with it. I loved his kids. I love them till today. They were all very good to me. So I remembered that Anthony did have a very good friend that I had met through the years, Junior, who also had a junkyard around Anthony. I said, Kathy, don't worry, I'll call Junior. I called Junior, who had lost his wife the year before to cancer, young, beautiful. And I explained to him what Kathy needed. He said he'd get back to me in a couple of days. He did. We bought the car. He told me he didn't understand Anthony and why Anthony did what he did. But, and plain language, screw Anthony. You want to go to dinner?
Yeah.
What I
Of course. Why not? Right.
5 husbands, Marie, but I've never gone to a bar to look for any of them. They were always right there.
I know. Well, yeah, you had a journey to go on. You had things to learn, and these were your teachers. That's how I look at it in my life. Everyone's a teacher in your life. So, you're with Junior. His real name is Ernest, right? Ernest Varacalli. And I have to comment, even up in my area, for some reason, junkyards are like a common business for people in the life, people in the crime families, like they all have junkyards. I don't know if it has to do with money laundering or what, but it's amazing that at least 2 of yours have junkyards.
Will be right. What 99 out of 100 people, if you tell them, you're working in a junkyard, or somebody in a junkyard, you're married to someone who owns a junkyard, that's the first impression.
Oh yeah.
Now with Anthony, he had a junkyard which was 100% legitimate, and that's the only one I've ever known, because he had a city contract.
Yeah.
So he the city. So everything that went on in his junkyard was above board.
Yeah.
But he 30 years or whatever it was, and Junior had a junkyard right around the corner for 30 years. I ever met him. So I didn't really equate anything so underlying that it would be so devastating for me to be with somebody like Junior.
And we're gonna talk for a few more minutes, but believe it or not, we won't be able to get into every detail, and we'll have to do another podcast. So I want to finish up with Junior, and he was doing money laundering, it turns out, or was accused of doing money laundering.
I don't know if it was money laundering, what they arrested him for. I know they arrested him for car parts. That was basically what it was. It was, they came into the junkyard and took away everything that was there. And it was more car parts than, I believe, money laundering.
Maybe stolen car parts. Yeah.
They kind of, however they look into it.
Yeah, it's a big thing too. So he was arrested. He did go to court, and he was found guilty. I believe he got 10 years in prison.
I have to back you up a minute.
Oh, back me up.
Only because it's relevant. When I married Junior, I knew he had this junkyard, as I said, where it was for many, many years. Mm-hmm. So when I wanted to get married, I had already sold my home that I had with Anthony for over $1 million. Mm-hmm. And I had this money allotted. It was definitely going to building a home on Staten Island, which I did. I was not married to Junior at the time. So I always wanted to keep, for whatever reason, our money separate. So with that said, when I married Junior, I never had a prenup. I, you know,
Mhm.
the man was an honorable man, which he was. He was a man like that. I felt closer to Junior in that aspect of my life that he would never do anything to hurt me or in me. And like he always said, his junkyard is his business. I had nothing to do with it. But
Mhm.
on the arrested, they came into my home and arrested me. Took
Right.
and actually I had my own court battle. Junior never did what I guess he could have done to make life easy for himself because they wanted information from Junior. I don't know what it was, and he never went into it with me. But
Mhm.
all I know stuck by him because this wasn't anything he would have wanted to do to hurt me.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
nevertheless,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, because of my background, now don't forget, I wanted to go to trial, and I told my lawyer, I don't care what they're saying. I had nothing to do with this.
Mhm.
And my sister, Camille, be sensible. Any jury in the world, if I put you on the stand and they say to me, who were you married to? Number one, Joseph Colucci. How did he die? He was murdered. Who murdered him? Husband. Number two was involved. Anything you say after that is tainted,
You look
whether
bad.
you
You look
or
like a bad woman.
don't. It is automatically tainted, and you will
Mhm.
lose. You will
Mhm.
lose. You might even end up in jail.
Yeah.
Was another very hard pill for me to swallow.
Uh-uh.
I didn't have a choice.
Mhm. So did you
So
take a plea deal?
I took a plea deal. They pretty much took all my assets away, which I worked very hard a long part of my life. They had nothing to do with Junior. They came all through my late husband, Robert. They didn't care. And I made this deal to stay out of jail, truthfully.
Of course.
And I felt the condemnation I received was unjustified. And that was
Absolutely.
fine.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do a podcast, Marie, because I think you, as my co-anchor with this, had really covered everything I had to say. And I thank you so much for it.
Yeah. Well, don't go yet. No, I just want to finish it. I have a little side thing that makes us even more like the one husband, Bob. He was involved with criminal types in our town, and
Was
he collected. I know Ernest
Marie,
Jr., but yes.
Bob was the builder. He was a retired police
No,
officer.
my husband, Bob. My husband.
Oh, I'm
No, it's okay.
sorry.
My husband, Bob. So he was like a bouncer. He collected money for them. He ran their card games, etc. And he had a situation where they wanted him to get a bookstore to launder money. And I didn't know it at the time. And I just thought they were, helping him, supporting him. But they said it has to be in your wife's name. And they had a fire, it was arson, and it was getting investigated. And the person on the arrest warrant was me, of course, because I'm the owner, right? And it was in the newspaper and everything. I was like, oh my God, I think that was one of the worst things because all the other stuff that was done to me by husbands wasn't public knowledge unless I told somebody. I handled it. But that really upset me. And so I understand what you went through with the criminal thing. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or not, they're going to hang you.
Marie got one very important fact, and I
What's
apologize.
okay?
I have to go back a bit.
Okay.
I was married to Junior,
Hmm.
and I remained, like I said, with my own banking. He had his bank accounts, I had mine.
Mhm.
But when I went in for the house itself, being it was under my name, I wanted to do a second, like a refinance type thing to get a few dollars. I wanted to do. He had a pool. I forgot at the time. I refinanced, but at the time I wasn't working full time. And
Mhm.
Junior said to me, "So you're working at Angle Auto Parts?" That was his junkyard.
Yeah,
That was a big mistake
it's a big
because
mistake.
I lied on that mortgage application.
That's
And
it.
lying on a mortgage application boils down to money laundering. So that's why
Yeah.
this whole thing
I know.
transpired the way it did. And I
And
couldn't fight it
yeah,
out of the story because of my background.
yeah.
But that is the God's honest
Yeah, that's the truth. I believe
lie.
you because I know. Yeah. Well, the people that were involved said, don't worry about it. It's going to get squashed. And it did get squashed. But I said, but my name was tarnished, and you
They
can't do that, so I totally
right.
understand. And it's amazing, but women are more loving, more compassionate, kinder than most men. Most men. So I think we have a little bit of naivete when we see someone, we're seeing the good in them, not the bad. And I think that's what both of us did. And we made some
Yeah,
huge
yeah,
mistakes. But your book is called
absolutely.
You Be the Judge, right? Your book,
Yes.
You Be the Judge. And where can they buy the
I,
book? Oh, you have your
this is
copy.
it.
There it is. And where can we buy that?
Well, it's offered through Archway Publishing, and it's
Mhm.
also on Amazon.
It is on Amazon. Okay. I was lucky enough to get the Kindle version before it got taken off. So I have the Kindle version, but you could still get paperback and hardcover. And thank you so much, Camille, for coming on today and sharing all that intimate stuff. But I have to
Thank
have you
you
back.
enough. Thank you. I appreciate all you've done. Thank you.
And I'm going to have you back because we need to go into more detail and talk more about feelings and things like that. Are you up for that another time? Okay.
Another time.
All right. So thanks again, Camille, and everyone that's listening. I hope you enjoyed this segment, and I plan on having Camille back. See you soon.
Thank you, Marie. Enjoy your holiday.
I'm still here.